Pelican, and you can too.
That's it, the Pelican, and you can too. That's right. That's right. Good morning.
Good morning.
And thank you all for the opportunity to come and speak to you today. My name is Reverend Todd Drew of the Aleph Garden Independent Gnostic Temple, which is a virtual Gnostic temple that can be found on Facebook if any of you are interested in checking us out. I am ordained both as an esoteric and interfaith minister, and have been a lifelong student of comparative religion and spirituality. I was born and raised and have been a lifelong citizen of Jacksonville, Florida. I was actually born just a few miles from here at St. Vincent's Hospital. And for those of you that do the astrology, I was actually born on the feast of St. Vincent, which is interesting. I must say that I was very excited to hear back from Reverend Mary here at the Cosmic Church of Truth after a message I had left asking if there might be a need for me in my presentation that I had prepared and wanted to deliver. Reverend Mary, thank you for the opportunity to speak here today. It means more to me than you may realize, and I am most grateful. I have a tendency to be terrified of public speaking. There is a quote by Joseph Campbell: "The cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek." Thank you all for sharing this beautiful cave with me in my journey through life. Friedrich Nietzsche once said, "One repays a teacher badly if one always remains a pupil." So here it goes. I would like to give you all a short history as to why I specifically asked to speak here as my first public talk. It is no accident. The Cosmic Church of Truth has had a very special place in my heart, more especially the inspiration I received from Reverend Harold Tunks as a very young man many years ago, when he took the time and lots of it with a very confused seeker such as myself, when he did not have to. And for that, I wish to honor Harold, my friend, with this talk today, as well as all the many teachers and guides I've had through my life. I can remember the time Harold and I spent together like it was yesterday, as well as the questions I would formulate in the car on the way to his bookstore that I would be asking him that day, of which he would graciously assist me with until I had exhausted him, at which point he would say with a smile, "Seek and ye shall find." I still have many of the books I purchased from him, which to this day still retain the strong incense smell that was so familiar to me during that time. A smell many of you are quite familiar with, I'm sure. How many of you remember the WVH bookstore? You remember that? I'm sure you loved it as much as I did. The name of my talk today is The Pelican, and you can too. This symbol has seemed to follow me my whole life. First in my Christian upbringing, and beyond into my esoteric adventures such as Freemasonry, alchemy, and other magical and mystical research as well. The explanation I offered you today certainly is not the only explanation. It, like all symbolism, speaks to us differently. The explanation I offer today is how it has revealed itself to me, and continues to do so. There is a saying, the best teachers show you where to look, not what to see. The account I give today is merely what I saw, and not at all what it actually is. I like to begin my talks and other functions as a minister with a reading from the book of Isaiah, chapter 61, verse 1. The Spirit of the Lord God is upon me, because the Lord hath anointed me to preach good tidings unto the meek. He hath sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives, and the opening of the prison to them that are bound. When I began to research the history of this symbol, I was unable to find a direct name for it. However, I found references to it from everything from Shakespeare to Dante's Inferno, Parasidio. I discovered within the Society of Creative Anachronism there is a group of people who are awarded the title of Pelican for selfless service to the society. I have found it, as I stated before, in Freemasonry and other mystery schools. The other day I even noticed it was the state seal of Louisiana. Is it not interesting how, when we put our focus on something, we begin to see it everywhere? I fairly recently received a bit of revelation about this symbol that I wish to share with you today. I was reading a post on a friend's Facebook page that was entitled, "Why Haters Hate." And this image of the pelican popped in my head, and everything all at once for me made sense, though it took several days for me to sort it all out to the point I could communicate it in a comprehensible manner. You see, this is the way symbolism works. Upon seeing a symbol for the first time, it registers in the subconscious until a time it will be most beneficial, thus bringing it forward as it did for me at the time when I least expected it. You will notice in the image there are three elements. First, we have an adult pelican who is piercing its own breast and drawing enough blood to feed its young, which is the second element. This imagery is a representation of an occurrence that actually happens in nature. When all other food sources have been exhausted, the mother pelican will actually pierce its own breast and feed its babies in order to keep them alive during very lean times. An incredible act of self-sacrifice, to say the least. You will recall at the beginning of this statement, I stated there were three elements. First, I pointed out the adult big pelican. Then I pointed out the baby pelicans. Can anyone tell me what the third element is?
Us.
Who says?
Us.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. The third element of this symbol is us, the observer. We can zoom in on the image where we can contemplate the babies or the adults and possibly see ways we might identify with one or both of these elements. We, as the observer, can also zoom back out and see the big picture, unattached and independent from the symbol. I have read a few explanations as to the allegory of this symbol. One thing I consistently observed was the reference to the large pelican as a mother pelican. One thing I would like to add that I have yet to see in this explanation is that if we assume the figure is female, we are making just that, an assumption, as the figure is merely an adult, and the sex of it is unknown to us. This tells me the term "to mother" is a genderless act that any of us are capable of. Upon my recent revelation and contemplation of this symbol, I began to realize that we humans, for the most part, interact in much the same way as the pelican. An adult human will often serve their children or neighbors, friends, the elderly, as well as strangers in need. As I began to further contemplate this symbol, the guru, rabbi, teacher, minister, spiritual advisor came to mind, as well as parents and older siblings. This is where my insight began to take shape and where things really became interesting for me. How many times have we heard a spiritual leader or guru make the statement, lose the ego or kill the ego, overcome the ego? If you see the Buddha on the road, kill him, for the Buddha is within you. The list goes on and on. I, for one, began to think of many examples of people who have either directly or indirectly said these things, such as Alan Watts, Eckhart Tolle, the Buddha, Jesus, Muhammad, Rumi, Moses with his golden calf. And I am sure if we all put our heads together, we can think of many more famous names who have alluded to the destruction of the ego. During this period of contemplation, I had to stop and scratch my head for a minute. The question then came to me, if all of these leaders are saying the same thing about the ego, why is it each of them have such big egos? I said to myself, they are household names that just about everyone knows. They have egos so big, as a matter of fact, that they live on long after their earthly passing. Which begs the question, what really is the ego? To put it in the most basic terms I can possibly think of, the ego is simply what distinguishes you from me. It is how I can know where I end and you begin. Without the ego, I would be alone right now, and this conversation we are having would be impossible. Now, in the animal kingdom, there is, generally speaking, two types of parenting methods. Some animals simply give birth to their young and leave them to fend for themselves until adulthood. If they make it. And there are also animals such as the pelican that will stay with and raise their offspring to near adulthood. We humans, for the most part, differ in our parent-child relationships, as we generally maintain a relationship with our parents for the better part of our lives. This is one big difference that distinguishes us from animals, which is great. However, it can and often does present some problems, such as dependency and codependency, which can and often does stunt the personal, individual development, which prevents us from realizing our full potential and purpose in life. Which brings us full circle back to our need for preachers, gurus, spiritual teachers, bosses, etc. We go to listen to these teachers and ask questions. We buy the books of these individuals, and what is the core message they seem to say over and over? Let go of the ego. Get rid of the ego. Kill the ego. I am here to tell you, and this is from personal experience and observation, a deflated ego is every bit as problematic as an overinflated one. An overinflated ego will intentionally demand you remain dependent on them and keep you small. A deflated ego will attach to the big ego and demand the big pelicans stay big while they stay small. They remain small pelicans. And oftentimes will find themselves resenting the big ego as they cannot understand why they are not as successful. Which may very well answer the question that was on my friend's Facebook page, why haters hate. In this unhealthy scenario, no one is to blame because everyone is at fault, as it is a mutually supportive vampirism that can often place both in a prison of their own making. I want to make one point clear. I am not at all advocating not helping others. Quite the opposite, actually. The key is finding for ourselves the middle way between the extremes of a deflated ego and an overinflated ego. So the next time we hear a guru tell us to let go of the ego, let us ask ourselves this question. Are they telling us to let go of our ego, or are they asking us to let go of their ego? Thank you.